Thinking back, my excuse, to the extent that I have one, is that I was mentally and physically exhausted. I'd been awake for almost 40 hours, most of which had been spent in airports and on airplanes, and now we were 2 hours into a 6-hour bus ride. So when a low, muffled thump sounded from the left rear of the bus, I passed it off as nothing. A speed bump, a pothole, perhaps a rock in the road. I went back to reading my book, or more accurately, I went back to absently reading the same paragraph over and over again, comprehending little. The other mission travelers chatted in twos and threes. A quiet hum of conversation filled the bus, over which I began to hear a low, quiet, consistent thump, thump, thump. But the bus driver didn't seem to think anything was amiss, and the passing cars didn't act as though anything were amiss, and no one else on the bus seemed to notice anything, so I normalized it. The thump, the thump, the thump. Then after the thumping continued for a while, I'm not sure how long, I started to notice a smell. At first, nothing more than a faint sharpness in the air, something that could be mistaken for a whiff of a hot asphalt or a slightly metallic odor. I figured it would eventually go away in the way that smells often do. But this smell wasn't leaving. The odor thickened, unmistakably artificial, sharp and biting and oily, and it settled in the back of the throat, inviting a cough. There was a smoky edge now, and I thought, someone out there must be burning something plastic or rubber. But no one else was raising an alarm, so I didn't. Everything must be okay. And then things began to happen a bit more quickly. I noticed a passing motorcyclist pulling abreast of the bus driver and making a gesture, arm extended, palm down, pull over, which we really couldn't do. We were on a downhill grade, hugging a hillside. There really wasn't a shoulder at all for another minute or two. And at last the road leveled, and the shoulder widened, and the bus driver pulled over, opening the front door. That's when the smoke and smell filled the bus in earnest. It wasn't out there, it was in here. And the instruction came, everybody off. I shut my book, grabbed my bag like they tell you not to do in an emergency egress, and stepped into the aisle. Midway back in the bus, I was hemmed in by people ahead and behind, but I wasn't thinking of anyone else, only of Amy, of myself, and of getting out. The smoke thickened faster than the line was moving. At the front, people stepped forward calmly. Further back, impatience grew. Hurry up, move along, get off the bus. But everyone's pace stayed stubbornly the same. And at length, when I reached the front of the bus, I saw why. In the middle of the aisle sat a huge cooler of bottled water, blocking the way like a cork in a bottle. And deliberately, one by one, each passenger stepped up and over it and then down again, leaving it where it was. And I did exactly the same. Moving on, though for those still trapped in the smoke behind me, the delay mattered more. Outside, we saw the truth of our circumstances. The left rear tire of the bus had blown. That was the thup sound. And the right front wheel was belching flames, fueled by leaking brake fluid. We were on a roadside in the middle of nowhere, and that was day one of our Honduras trip. But this isn't really about Honduras. One of the things about mission trips is that you see and experience things that make you reflect differently on life back home. When I think about that bus ride, I realize that it's not just a story about travel fatigue or a flat tire or even a fire. It's a larger story about what happens when people like me sense that something is wrong, perhaps badly wrong, but choose not to act out of world weariness, out of confusion, out of self-absorption, out of just not knowing what to do. It's about how easy it is to normalize the strange thump, to ignore the smell in the air, to step right over the obstacle that's in front of us and move along as though it's not our responsibility. It's a story about slipping too readily into self-preservation mode and forgetting to consider the plight of one's neighbors. And that makes me think about life in the United States right now. There has been for some time, I believe, a growing awareness that something is not right, that something is badly wrong, burning beneath the surface. We hear the thumps and we see the smoke, but too often we keep reading and reading the same paragraph over and over again, distracting ourselves, waiting for someone else to say or do something, because what are we to say? What are we to do? Look around. The fabric of our life together feels frayed. We're a divided nation right now, speaking past one another with contempt. We've always had our differences of politics and priorities, but now simple civility seems quaint, almost old-fashioned. Prices rise, and aggravation or an inconvenience for me. But families who were already stretched thin find themselves one flat tire away from disaster. Missed work, a lost job, an eviction. And in some families, parents are skipping meals so that their children can eat. Meanwhile, we cut the strings of social programs and safety nets in the name of government efficiency. Masked ICE agents in unmarked vans raid neighborhoods and workplaces, libraries, and places of worship, dragging our terrified neighbors away from their families. But it isn't me. It isn't my family. This isn't to say that immigration reform is not needed. It's the casual, compassionless cruelty of the methods that demands response. But too few people are responding. College campuses opened their doors to new students this month, and within days were hit with dozens of hoax shooting reports nationwide. Cruel pranks that sowed fear and confusion. Who would do that? Meanwhile, in Minneapolis, another tragic incident of very real school violence, the 229th since 2018, according to Education Week, which will doubtless be met by very real inaction because we cannot muster the collective will to do anything about the plague of mass violence or the weapons that are used again and again and again and again and again. But we can work ourselves into a social media frenzy over a Cracker Barrel logo. That will stir us to demand change. These are the muffled thumps. These are the smells of smoke. These are the dangerous obstacles, the coolers in the aisle, and the question is, will we go on ignoring them? Will we convince ourselves that someone else will deal with it? Will we keep stepping over the obstacles that choke the way for our neighbors? Or will we wake up and take responsibility for one another in the broadest sense, before the smoke thickens beyond bearing? This is where the words of Jesus speak powerfully. You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hidden. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. To be the light is to do more than to worry about our own safety, our own comfort, our own exit from the bus. To be the light is to notice what others are ignoring, to speak when silence feels safer, and to move the cooler when others step over it, and to check on the ones who are still trapped in the smoke. Being the light means refusing to normalize the thump and the smoke in our common life. It means looking at the bitterness of our public discourse and daring to answer that bitterness with kindness, showing a different way. It means seeing our neighbors struggle under the weight of rising prices and deciding to share, to advocate, to stand alongside them. It means speaking up when fear and violence stalk our schools and communities, even when the issues are complex and the conversations are hard. It means saying, this is not just someone else's problem. This is our calling as Christ's people to be bearers of light in the gathering darkness. And here's the promise. We're not left to do this alone. Christ himself is the true light that shines in the darkness, the light that no darkness can overcome. He has placed that light in us so that when the world says everything's fine, nothing's wrong, there's nothing to be done, we can answer, no, something is wrong, but God has given us the courage to face it, and God's love will not let us go. Because in the end, our shared salvation is never about just getting me off the bus. Salvation is about God gathering us all into life together. Genuine community marked by civility and compassion. Community and caring fueled by love. Salvation requires a different way of living, a kingdom way of living, where everyone is a neighbor worthy of love. I began the sermon with a story from our Honduras trip, so I'll conclude with the rest of the story. What happened after we got off the bus? Because it got better, we did better. As we took stock of the situation, I started to look around. One of the veterinary students traveling with us was bent over, hands on his knees, coughing, the result of smoke inhalation. And members of our team went over to him. Are you okay? Have a seat. Drink this water. And as the bugs from the nearby long grass began biting, people began sharing insect repellent. Take this. Have some of mine. And as the wait for a new bus stretched to 1 hour and then to 2, people began to open their backpacks and share their food. It wasn't loaves and fishes, it was beef jerky and Pringles. And there weren't 5,000 of us, but all ate and were filled, and there were leftovers. Across the road, there was sort of a sad-looking chicken restaurant outside a house, clearly a homegrown enterprise. And they opened their home to let a number of us use their restroom. Not a word about our muddy feet. No, the bathroom is only for paying customers. Just the kindness of strangers doing what they could to meet a need. And that's what being the light is like, I guess. It's about taking notice of the people around you. It's about realizing that we're all in this together and being a part of the solution by sharing whatever gifts or whatever kindness we can offer. But not to forget the first part of the story. Sometimes being the light is more than that. Sometimes it's more than simply sharing kindness once the danger is past. Sometimes it means noticing the danger before it consumes us. Sometimes it means refusing to keep reading the same paragraph over and over while the thumping grows louder. Sometimes it means being the one who does what no one else wants to do, who sees the cooler in the aisle and moves it, who risks speaking up when silence feels easier, who refuses to believe that the smoke belongs only to someone else's family or someone else's community. Because being the light is not passive. It's not just waiting for God to make things better or for someone else to take responsibility. Being the light means stepping into the darkness with courage, however small the step, so that others may see and breathe and live. The truth is, there will always be thumps and smoke and coolers in the aisle. There will always be things that tempt us to close our eyes and wait it out. But Christ has already placed His light within us, and He calls us to shine. Not for ourselves alone, but for our neighbors. Not just to get us off the bus, but to build a community of compassion where no one is left behind. So may we be the ones who notice. May we be the ones who move obstacles. May we be the ones who share the light that Christ has given us until the day when the darkness is gone for good and we all find ourselves safely home together. Amen.